People of the internet! Welcome back to another video. It is I, Don Thomas, back in here with another one. As always, folks, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for the support on this channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, folks. I got a video pulled up here entitled, Does God Hear Our Prayers? I've reacted to videos from this channel before. Of course, the channel is The Diary of a CEO. Shout out to this dude here, Steve Bartlett. Looks like it's a conversation between this gentleman here and Professor Brian Keating. And it was something that, of course, that struck my attention. Now, of course, if you stumbled on this video, if you decided to play on this video, I'm assuming that you believe in God. Some of us do, some of us don't. I myself, as I say a lot of the times as well too, I'm not necessarily the most religious person. I personally don't subscribe to any specific religion. However, I do solely wholeheartedly believe in a higher power in which I like to call God. That's just my thoughts. Now, of course, there's a lot of situations where whether you're somebody that believes in praying, meditation, and solitude, I know those are some things I like to do a lot as well too. I myself is somebody who likes to spend some quiet time from here to there, whether I'm able to sit down in a quiet corner and actually sit down and pray, or whether I'm just, quiet meditations in my mind. I see a title like this, and it makes you wonder, is anybody hearing these words on the receiving end, right? Is God himself, right? Assuming that, I guess there's people can go down the rabbit hole as to what God is. But when you do sit down and you are praying, and you are meditating, and you are maybe, putting your positive affirmations out into the world, is there anybody hearing you on the receiving end? Let's get some context from this video. Let's see what these guys think. Of course, I'm going to share my thoughts. I encourage you to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's get into it.
You said that you think of God as almost like a force. Do you think it's a conscious force? If I sit down and pray to this God, will they hear me?
I honestly could say I don't know, but I know that you'll change. I know that you'll hear yourself.
Okay.
If you can go down to the ocean, Steve, if you can go down to the Pacific Ocean and just be isolated and just pour yourself out for an hour, I guarantee it will change your life. You will be in tears, but no one will see you. And that's the thing. That's why you have to be alone. You cannot do it with any other person. You must do it on your own, because there's no Sam Harris meditation waking up app. It's not going to do the same for you as just you alone. And not knowing is part of the point, I think.
But what's that got to do with God? What's me going down to the beach and pouring my heart out, which would get me into my amygdala? It'll get me thinking about, it'll make me emotional. I can imagine, even listening to certain music can make you feel that. What role is God playing in that moment?
Because if God exists, I do believe that he's inside of you and that you can connect with him. Again, you can't detect him with an MRI machine, or you can't detect him with a laser. But, again, it's a big if. I'm not guaranteeing. I'm sorry to disappoint. I'm not that kind of doctor. I can't give you a prescription that'll make you believe. But to have access to it, you have to be open to a communication, right? Imagine you got, an email and you just never respond to it. Like people, remember the movie Interstellar? Have you seen that movie? So, the people on Earth are communicating with the people, Matthew McConaughey's daughter, and she doesn't know if he's listening, and he doesn't, and he knows that but in that sense, he's kind of like this God, like he has knowledge that she doesn't have. But if she doesn't try, maybe she wouldn't, maybe just the aspect of trying, the attribute of trying is what opened her up to that return signal.
Let's pause right there. Very interesting, man. He said a lot in there that I resonate with. Let's go. He said something that I thought was interesting. What did he say in that opening sentence? See something real quick? He said something that I resonate with.
You think of God as almost like a force. Do you think it's a conscious force? If I sit down and pray to this God, will they hear me?
I honestly could say I don't know, but I know that you'll change. I know that you'll hear yourself.
Pause right there. That's the part. That's the part I resonate with. And I think that's the part that one could maybe rationalize within themselves in the event that you're somebody that feels like, hey man, I'm praying, I don't think God is hearing me, or, again, assuming you believe in God or a high power, whatever the case is. If you are somebody that believes that you're praying and it's falling upon what they would say deaf ears, that it's just a one-way call, you can at least still admit, I would think, that if anything, you still feel good that you let that out, right? It's like whether your prayers were heard or not, I think just the process of gratitude, whatever the feeling may be, whether it be gratitude, whether it be sorrow, to go down and sit quietly and meditate on a thought and vent and express yourself, whether it be in asking for forgiveness, whether it be asking for strength, whether it be however your prayers look like in your own personal setting, I agree with them 100% in that regard and saying like, you will change. I think there is a positive benefit of expressing yourself to a force that you think is greater than you or guiding you, whether it's heard or not. I think the expression of the words, the process of the meditation, however that looks like for you, of course, that can look different for a lot of different people. I think that in itself has some type of healing remedy or consoling remedy within the act itself, regardless of whether you think it's heard by God or not. Very interesting. I too, of course, he opened up by saying, you know, under the impression that God is a force again, and we could go down this rabbit hole in terms of just like what we believe God is. I know, again, that's a word, you know, depending on certain circles, you say God, people, God, fool. And you got some people who wholeheartedly believe. Wherever you fall in that spectrum, I'll share my thoughts. I think me personally, I guess, you know, I've said on this channel before, I do believe that when I do sit down and pray, because another thing he said as well too, that's another thing he said, I'm glad I remembered that. He believes that God is maybe within us, inside us, right? So that way, when you do sit down and pray or you do meditate, whatever the case is, that maybe, again, we're all speculating here because it is hard to say for a fact, maybe the action itself is better than nothing. I'll speak for myself. I know when I pray and I meditate and things of that nature, I do believe that it is heard on the receiving end from something out there. The gentleman brought up the example of Interstellar. There's a movie, of course, I don't know if you guys seen it, where a father goes off into space to fix something, whatever the case is, and you know his daughter and his family is down on Earth, whatever the case is, and they're trying to send communication to each other. Does the girl know if her dad could hear the messages? Maybe, maybe not. He knows. He's trying to send messages to her. Does he know if it's receiving? Maybe, maybe not. Of course, if you see the movie, whatever. But you still at least try in the event that maybe, again, maybe even for your own sake, for your own sanity, for your own relief, to just express yourself, to verbalize the things that you're going through, right? In hopes that some good will come from it. I do agree with this, the act itself. I wouldn't necessarily say, nah, don't pray, don't meditate because you don't think that it's being heard on the receiving end. And that's a lot of things I think people think as well too, that if I pray really, really hard, you know, I think sometimes we, you know, maybe just culturally, whatever the case, we think that maybe God is Santa Claus. You come to him with your wishes and prayers and this, that, and the other, and then when it doesn't happen, you resent him more because you didn't get what you wanted for Christmas, right? Using that analogy. I don't think that's how it works. I do think there is a strength that comes with just the expression of gratitude, the expression of sorrow. There's a release. You know how some people say, man, sometimes you just gotta get a good cry out. You gotta cry sometimes. People will encourage you to cry. Or like, what's those rooms? Like a rage room, right? When you're bottled up emotions, you'll go to a rage room and you'll bash things and yell things and scream and you feel somewhat better at the end, right? I think that is how prayer can maybe work as well too, whether it's on the receiving end or not. Let's watch a little bit more. I think there's a little bit of good context here. Let's see if there's a little bit more context within this video.
So interesting, because when I asked the question about can God hear me, and if he can hear me, I guess the second question is, can he do anything about what he's hearing? There's so much evidence in the world that he can't hear you and he's not going to do anything about it.
But again, you say that, but like, what if, you know, who knows? If your parents, you know, like there were a lot of the stories in the early Old Testament are about sterile, barren women that couldn't conceive, you know, from Sarah, Rebecca to Rachel. All these women, they couldn't conceive. They cried out. They prayed. And again, women are closer to God in many ways because they contain life within them. Again, in what sense are you not already the recipient of the beneficence of something that we just don't understand? Like
potentially, yeah. But when I asked this question about like, if I pray, is it going to influence my outcomes in any way? You know, there's a natural
I don't believe
disaster.
it does. I don't believe it does for the reason I said before. Like people were praying here for the Dodgers. I'm sure there were equally virtuous people praying for the Yankees.
That's what I mean. If you think about the scientific method,
that's why I said I don't.
We could apply that and say, does prayer work?
Right.
And you could get, I don't know, look through history at the Holocaust or look at some other it's a natural disaster and think, has praying swayed the probabilities of bad things happening to these people?
So I don't believe that at all, but I do believe that fundamentally a person who believes that their actions have some impact will feel at least a sense of gratitude. Let me give you an example. You're familiar in Christianity, you know, people say a blessing before the meal, like grace before a meal. So in Judaism, you do that before the meal, after the meal, sometimes during the meal. But the point is, the more you express gratitude, you cannot be a happy person and be an ingrate.
Yeah.
The more you're grateful for, like the sound of, you know, of of, a song that is just so meaningful to you, the sight of a painting or a sunset. The more that and in Judaism, we say blessings for those things. Like we say, if we see a meteor shower, we say a blessing. It's hard for me as an astronomer. You got to say bless. A rainbow, another thing. Those are like kind of things we become desensitized to in life, and we just take for granted. To me, that gratitude connects to the ultimate source of that provided, that we can't understand. It's true. I cannot give you, and I told you, I have problems with prayer because I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to be told I have to say this in this order, stand up, sit down, fast on this day, do this thing, not eat that delicious pink guy with the curly tail. But when you do that, this, the more you're disciplined, the happier your life is. Who's more happy? The guy who eats everything he wants, or Jocko? Like the person who just gives into all their temptations of alcohol, the person who abstains and elevates what they do. And I think we want to elevate ourselves above the level of the animals.
But I can have all those behaviors of like
Pause right there. Very good points, man. Very good points. Again, none of us can say for sure. I think that's a lot of things that, I guess, organized religion kind of falls into that trap as well too. Where it's always interesting to me when people speak definitively about things. Like, I know this for fact. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's faith. And I get that, and you could have the strongest of strongest faith, but I like that this man's at least just conscious, at least saying, I don't know. Doesn't have the answers. I think that's respectable, man. And I say the same thing a lot as well, too. I speak very passionately about my beliefs and the things that I believe in, my faith, whatever the case is, but I'm very mindful not to come off and tell you that this is a fact of what I'm saying. This is just my strong, faith-bound opinion. But again, back to the original question, does God hear our prayers, man? Stephen asks himself, all right, it's one thing, does God hear my prayers? One, and if so, if he can hear them, is he inclined to do anything about it? He brings up an example of how people passionately pray for their favorite teams, and I always think that's whatever, but, the same way somebody can passionately pray for the Lakers, another can passionately pray for, whatever. And then you hear things about just our history, the Holocaust and this and that. I'm sure there was a lot of people that was praying to God and maybe felt that their prayers were on deaf ears, where the outcomes that they were hoping for didn't come in their favor. So I hear things like that. And again, I hear all of that, man. I do hear all of that, man. And I feel like examples like that will maybe, make people who don't believe or believers, think that, yeah, well, what's the point? Why will I pray? I'm sure the people during slavery times were praying. I'm sure the people during this, that, and the other, 9/11, blah, 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 all the catastrophic events, I'm sure they were praying and to no avail. I hear you. But again, just to the gentleman's point as well, too, just the act itself, the discipline, right? Because the man himself admitted, yeah, I don't like people telling me how to fast and when to pray and stand up and do this, that, the other. I get that. Some people just don't like the structure or the rigidness of that, a lot of these organized religions come with. But we can't deny that the act itself doesn't make you a better person. To be disciplined, to be grateful, to be humble to something that you believe is greater than you. I think those are characteristics within itself that anybody would admire. Just the ability to decompress. I think if anything in its simplest form, I think prayer, meditation, solitude, sitting down and opening your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions to something on a greater end, I think is a net positive. I don't see the harm in doing that. Like, I don't see how you feel worse than doing that. Now, you may grow weary if you feel like, oh, I've been praying and nothing's happening. Yeah, I can see how you'll feel frustrated, but can you say that you didn't feel a little bit better when you were humble to something? You gave thanks to something. You cried, let out that good cry, let out that good yell, that scream. You felt worse after you did that? You felt worse after you were able to slow down your thoughts, sit in solitude, recalibrate again, however prayer looks like for you. You felt worse after you gave thanks and just counted your blessings, the food you were able to eat, the ability to wake up and see another day, whatever, the roof over your head, your kids, whatever the case is. You felt bad after you gave thanks to that? Does it matter if anything heard those words on the receiving end? What about just for yourself? Was that not satisfaction enough? I don't know, folks. Those are my thoughts. Of course, I want to hear yours down in the comment section below. I think when it comes down to things like this, man, prayer is going to look a lot different for a lot of different people. I think people's beliefs are going to look a lot different for a lot of different people. But I don't see the harm in carrying out these acts. I don't see the harm in being gracious. I don't see the harm in believing in something greater than you. Those are my thoughts. Of course, I want to hear yours down in the comment section below. What do you make of this, folks? Does God hear our prayers? Are our prayers falling upon deaf ears, as they say? Are you tired of going through the routine of praying and praying and praying and feeling like your situation's not changing? Is that how God works? Is God Santa, where we wish upon a star and hope that he grants our greatest desires? Is that how God works? Those are my thoughts. Of course, I want to hear yours down in the comment section below. As always, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. I will catch you on the next one.